Civil War Digital Digest. I'm Will. Well, we're back at the Waterloo Farm Historic Museum, and they've welcomed us to shoot episodes, and we say thanks to them. I've brought a book out of my collection, and we're going to pull a recipe out of here today. This is a bound edition from 1865 of the American Agriculturist, which was a monthly publication for farmers. In April 1865, they shared a recipe in here how to make potato soup. Let's learn it. So our potato soup is meatless today. The only protein we're going to have in here is dairy products in the form of both cream and butter, but we'll get to those a little bit later. We're going to start with 6 potatoes and 2 quarts of water, which we've already pre-measured and have in our pot. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to slice up our potatoes. Now the recipe is silent on whether you want to peel the potatoes and then slice them or not. To make a cleaner soup, we've made this a couple of times. I'm going to go ahead and peel the potatoes and then cut them into chunks to make them cook faster. So it's really simple. Okay, one more comment I'm going to add here while I'm doing this is watch what I'm doing. You see me curling my fingers. No, this is not a 19th century trick. This is really good 21st century. Keep your fingers away from the knife blade. Okay, you didn't have to watch 6 potatoes be cut up and peeled. Now we're going to go ahead. The next step is to take 2 quarts of water, which we've pre-set up into our pot, put the potatoes in, and we want them to boil for 20 minutes. Now, in my experience making this a couple of times, that doesn't mean simmer. We want a pretty decent boil going, so let's get them in and get it going. Here we go. I didn't start the water and heat it up ahead of time. We're going to do it all at once. Now the thing I'll say is I'm putting the potatoes in. Be sure to measure the water out, as they say, to the 2 quarts, because this is not water to boil the potatoes and soften them that you'll dump it out then. This is the water that becomes the soup. So there we go. We've got the 6 potatoes. We've got the 2 quarts of water. This is going on the fire. Once it boils, we'll keep it boiling for 20 minutes. We'll be back after this is done for the next step. Well, welcome back. We've waited 20 minutes. The potatoes are in there, the water's in there. We're going to keep this. The next step is to finely mash them up. If I had a masher from the era, I'd use that. Lacking it, I've got a big spoon. I'm just going to keep working it until I see fewer and fewer chunks in here. Okay, that's pretty good. Potatoes are getting mashed down to become part of the soup. We'll let that sit for a second. Time to do the next part, and that is we're going to deal with the cream that we talked about, and we're going to get a heaping tablespoonful of flour. I've got flour over here. Basically, this is going to become our thickener. So the recipe calls for a teacup full of cream. Before we came out to Waterloo, I forgot to grab a box at home. It has an original set of Meakin ironstone china teacups at home. A teacup is going to mean what it means to you and what it means to your kitchen. So we're going to go ahead and use the measurement out of the Meakin. My Meakin teacups are just under a cup each. That's what we have here. What we're going to do is we're going to take that teacup of cream, and I'm pouring it into a separate container, because what we want to do now is we want to take a heaping tablespoonful of flour and stir it in there, and this will become our thickener. But the recipe says to pour it into the cream and beat it well in here first. I'm going to do it a little bit at a time. My goal is not to get this too clumpy. We've done this before where we've just dumped it all in and you just have clumps everywhere. Matter of fact, to stir this a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a fork here. It's going to be a little bit more like a whisk. And for the cream, we used heavy whipping cream. If you know how thick that is and you see this as I'm whipping more of the flour in, it's significantly thicker now than it was before. There's the last of it. So we've got it ready here. We're going to add the cream and flour mix to our soup. There we go. And we're going to look to stir it to incorporate the two together. Once we've added the cream and flour, the next thing we need to do is we need to add the 2 ounces of butter. And we'll slide that in and let that go. 2 thoughts here. First, salt. And if you have it, let's do a little bit of pepper. We've got both here. Do a couple of pinches of salt for a pot this thick. Do a little bit less of pepper. I'm going to stir that all in. Okay, now the ingredients are in. The recipe says to put the soup back on and cook it slowly until all the ingredients have combined into the soup. Instead of using the main arm of this fireplace, what we're going to do is we're going to use the legs of this pot. We're going to put some coals on the edge of the hearth and we're going to let it cook a lot more slowly. Once it's combined, we'll give it a taste. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, we've cooked the soup on the hearth side to let the ingredients combine, and we're shooting this episode at the middle of July, and we can tell you very much why summer kitchens were used. The cabin we're shooting in has heated up a lot from working on a hearthside fire, but I think it's going to be worth it. We're going to pull it off and test. All right, let's find out how we did. I was struck the first time I made the soup by how thin it was, but then I remembered it's a soup, not a chowder. Excellent. Really, it is the potatoes, the milks and creams, and then whatever salt and pepper you add. Really, it's a simple soup. One that I can just keep eating. I'll give you a hint from when I made it earlier and screwed it up. If you cook these ingredients too long together and cook too much of the water out, you just end up with a nice mashed potato. So I'm going to shoo the fly away because he doesn't need any of my soup. I do. I'm going to keep eating, and we'll see you next time on Civil War Digital Digest. Thanks for spending your time with us. We'll see you soon.